Welcome to the Start Something Show. Join world-renowned experts, change agents, and everyday folks who have done the amazing. All here to help you start something incredible. Now it's time to step out, live your perfect day, and create a legacy with your host, Tina Dietz.
Hey Superstarters, this is Tina Dietz and welcome back to the Backstage Pass. Today we're welcoming back Sharon McRill from the Betty Brigade. Sharon and her team of 12 Bettys perform such projects as moving coordination, organizing, and on and on and on. We're going to talk about all kinds of things today around organizing, how to become more productive, and also, business growth topics because Sharon is a wealth of knowledge and experience. Sharon, thank you for joining me on the Backstage Pass.
Excited to be here.
This is cool. Tina. This is very, very cool. So you and I had been talking about the growth of your business and the changes that you've gone through. And in the 13 years since you've started this business, you have had to change names of your business. You've gone from being a solo operation to now employing about a dozen people. And you're really well known in this Ann Arbor, Detroit area of Michigan. And I know the thought I'm sure has crossed your mind about franchising, and you've explored this area. What is your thoughts on expanding a business and whether someone should consider franchising their business or not?
Well, I was always going to franchise. Right from the beginning, it was in my mind that this was a franchisable idea and that it could be duplicated, and just putting it out there of franchising, like relocation and franchising organizing, is still a good idea to me. However, it is no longer a good idea for me. So the transition for me actually came when I started really looking at the barriers to franchising. And franchising is a very expensive and complicated and legally intensive endeavor. Your business has to be very ready to share a lot of information and to have a lot of financial resources in order to make this happen, or you have to give up control of your company and let somebody else finance it so that the franchising can happen. And so I was unwilling to give up the control. I did get an offer that someone wanted to buy my company, and I would have 20% and they would have 80%, which didn't sit well with me. The other part of this was that I really started thinking about, and one of my coaches talked to me about this, is what does it look like? What does your life look like when you're franchised? And I just kept thinking about how busy I was now and how I would get even busier. And I didn't necessarily want to be busier than the 70 hours a week I'm working now.
That's a lot of hours.
And it is a lot of hours, and we are in our peak season. So let me say that we're in our busiest time of year. And imagine being in your busiest time of year 12 months a year. The money and the cash flow is great, but you can't sustain that. You, as a human being, you can't sustain that. You need breaks. You need, systems in place that can help you maintain that high level of productivity. And what I decided to do was just get bigger within Michigan, and that's really the route that I decided to take in a very conscious decision, so that. And interestingly enough, as soon as I made that decision, we of course got busier. And so, it's been an interesting journey, because it felt like I just kept wanting to franchise and wanting to franchise. I kept talking about it and moving toward it, and it didn't mean that any of the processes or systems that we put in place that much smaller businesses like us, small businesses don't normally have these processes in place. So that's good. We have an operations manual. We have a training manual. We have an employee manual. We have all of these things that many small businesses don't have, because we were prepping for franchising. However, I just don't think we're going to go down that path. And it doesn't mean that we will never go down that path. It just means that probably for the next 5 years, that's not what I'm looking for. So I do have some things that I'm working on that I cannot legally talk about. Um, but the expansion in Michigan is definitely taking place.
And that's really a powerful decision to make. So you get so clear that you know where you're headed for the next 5 years. You have these chunks of, time for planning your business. And now that you have set that aside because you did all that homework on it, now you know where you need to go. And not for nothing, but having an operations manual and all of those other things is so valuable, especially at the stage of growth that your business is at with the number of employees you have and everything.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Now, for you personally as a business owner, what do you foresee as kind of your ultimate thoughts on, I hate to use the term end game, but I can't think of another term right now. Like, do you imagine that someday you'd love to sell this? Do you imagine that you'll have somebody else take over it? Or are you just going to Betty it till the end of time?
Oh, I have visions of Hawaii. So definitely there will be a sale in the future. And definitely there will be a passing of the torch. And I'm expecting that to happen within the next 10 years. That's really what I'm gearing towards. And even the growth in Michigan is leading me towards that because it will make the business stronger and more viable and actually much, much more purchasable. So that's kind of exciting to add this new component that fits in perfectly with what we're already doing. So so that's the plan. And yes, there is an end game. And yes, there is definitely, and I'm actually working on that end game now. So it's 10 years away or less, hopefully. And I'm working on that now with my CFO so that we're making those plans so that when that buyer comes or when that opportunity presents itself, we've got most of our ducks in a row, that it's not going to take us completely by surprise. Because when somebody walks up to you and says, I'd like to buy your business, you have to be ready to say, okay, here's the valuation, and this is the kind of payment terms I want.
And this is, I think, so important. I want to point something out to our tribe here, our super starters, in that you are planning for something 10 years out, and all this growth that you have been having, I would directly link, and tell me if you agree, that a lot of the planning and strategy you've had about growing your business has actually led to growth now, not just growth in the future. So many people are afraid to take the time or put the energy into doing the strategy that is longer term. But I think what you're giving us here is a good example how putting the time and energy into that actually changes what you're doing now and results in more business.
It absolutely does. And where it refocused us was around more corporate clients. And it's interesting because I came out of corporate life and now I'm putting my business back into corporate life because that's where we're finding it is most profitable for us. There isn't the kind of price sensitivity from the clientele when we're working with a CPA firm or a law firm or a trust group, because they just say, well, of course this needs to be done and we're going to pay for it.
So you offer services that these companies need and want already. And
Yep.
Do you find that in the market that you're in and the types of services that you're providing, that there's an enormous amount of competition, or is it pretty niche?
There is some competition. It is pretty niche, but there is some competition, and the competition does it differently than us. And so that's the good news, is that there are choices, and these folks can make their choices. Interestingly enough, the competition hasn't figured out yet where I'm going with my plan. So I'm already probably a year and a half or 2 years ahead of them in terms of putting myself in front of the kind of clients that they will eventually want, but they don't have yet.
In the realm of corporate.
In the realm of corporate.
Very good.
And so that's where it's really helped have a vision and have a plan, because knowing who to go and build relationships with. And I'm not talking about just trying to get a sale, because getting a sale, anybody can get a sale. It's about building the relationship with a company. Do we have time for a story?
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's a story. We were working with a company, a trust group, a large national trust group that had a pretty big office in Detroit. And one of the people who was managing the trust, we'll just call her Sue, for a generic name. And Sue got fired by her boss. And I knew that she did a really good job when she was working with us. And so I reached out to her and said, "Hey, Sue, I recognize that you're no longer with this company, and I work with a lot of trust groups. So if you want, send me your resume." And she said, "Okay." And so she sent me a resume, and I sent it out to some attorneys that I work with that I thought she might be a good fit for. Well, I didn't end up getting her a job, but she did end up at another very large trust group, much bigger than the one she was working for originally. And she brought my company in as a resource to that bigger company. And now we have a huge account with them. And that wouldn't have happened if I had not taken the time to just be a human and build that relationship and show a little kindness to this woman who had just gotten fired. So, and I know that she will be my fan forever because I did that. And it wasn't for selfish reasons. It was, hey, you need to find a job. You've got 2 little kids. But the point of it being that it ended up being a much bigger deal for my company and for myself than I ever anticipated.
Exactly. And we know that our relationships are the lifeblood of our business, but there's no way we can strategize the end game on that because it involves too many factors being human, but it always does come back around to serve us one way or another. That's a great story. It's a really great story. I was thinking about you working with estates that are being liquidated or corporations that are moving from one side to another, or even people downsizing, as is happening a lot right now with folks who want to live simpler or have space, even things like the tiny house movement, where people are having less stuff. In your experience, when people are cleaning things out or liquidating an estate, any circumstance where you are letting a bunch of stuff go, what happens to all that stuff, and how do you make good decisions around what to keep and what to let go of?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and this is kind of where our expertise sits, is that there is actually a food chain of stuff. Okay, so remember the picture of like the little fish getting eaten by the medium-sized fish, getting eaten by the bigger fish. Well, that's kind of how I think of the stuff. Like at the top rung, there are the high-end estate sellers. And so, for example, think of Sotheby's in New York. Okay. Sotheby's is a world-renowned auction house. And we have actually sold things for our clients through Sotheby's, through their Detroit office. And there are a couple other high-end estate sellers or auction services in Detroit. The next rung down from that are what I would refer to as our regular estate sellers or regular antique dealers. And it doesn't mean that they don't have some fine antiques. It just means that they there might be a small nick, or like a drawer doesn't quite close properly, or, it's not in 100% pristine condition. It's lovely. It's very, very nice, but it's not perfect. That's the next rung down. The next rung down from that are the consignment dealers. And the consignment dealers are a fairly wide swath of people. Consignment can consist of all different kinds of things. It can consist of eBay resellers, and there are a lot of them out there. We actually work with an eBay store that it has an actual storefront where we take things, but we also work with some other storefronts that do consignment. And typically a consignment dealer takes anywhere between, I would say between 25 and 35% is pretty much the standard. But there are times when they take less, like if they're selling a car or a house, or times where they take more if something is a particularly odd item to sell and they're having a hard time selling it. So, so there's that's just it's kind of a variable, but pretty much if you stick in the 25 to 35% range, that's fairly standard in terms of selling stuff. The next rung down from those folks are the donation services. So if it doesn't sell at consignment and if it doesn't sell on eBay, then it really should be donated because chances are it's not that valuable. So let it go to a donation center where somebody really finds a treasure. You get to take the full tax write-off and the item still leaves your home and it still goes to somebody who really wants it. So everybody wins in that case. The next level down from that are things that should be recycled or are trash or are damaged and really cannot be donated. So we've talked about, all these different levels from very fine antiques to, pretty damaged stuff that either needs to be repaired or put in the trash. So it's about looking at where does that item fit? And sentiment gets in the way of a lot of that for a lot of people. So they say, oh, this is a really valuable blah, blah, blah. And you look at it and you say, well, there's water rings on it and it looks like some kind of animal chewed the leg. And yes, it's still an okay piece of furniture, but the valuation drops because the eye of the beholder is a little bit different. Like we as an outside person are looking at things and seeing it from a different perspective.
You're taking off the veneer of the emotional attachment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now that being said, there are lots of times when we walk into people's homes and they think things are of little or no value, and those are the things that actually sell.
You have any stories about that?
Well, we were in, it was actually one of the real estate agent's house. Her father-in-law died and the house had been sitting vacant for a year and the family still hadn't done anything about it. And the agent said, look, let's just get this company in here to liquidate it and so we can get the house on the market and sell it because we're paying property taxes, we're paying utilities, we're paying insurance on an empty house. And so there's a cost to that too.
Absolutely.
So what they brought us in and there was this, what looked like a plastic long-necked ukulele. Like the neck was maybe 2 feet long, maybe even longer. And it was kind of this yellowish plastic with an orange back. And I trained my staff not to know what the value of things are, but to recognize things as being, wow, that's different enough. I need to check with one of our sellers. And just to have things catch their eye so that they know, oh, that's something. And that's what we did with it. We set it to the side and let our eBay reseller take a look at it. And this weird little plastic looking ukulele sold for $300 on eBay. And the homeowner, or the real estate agent, she just said, we would never have known that.
It was some kind of collectible item.
Yeah. She said we would have put that in the trash and not have thought anything of it.
Wow. So this goes back to what you were saying in your episode of the Start Something show about one of the things you've learned as a business owner is to make sure that you're working inside of what you're really good at and to just pay people for the things that you're not. I think you used a great example of a plumber who, if your sink is spouting water, you can kind of Google how to fix it yourself and try to figure out, spend several hours doing that, or you can go to the plumber next door and pay him to fix it in 5 minutes,
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
So same kind of thing. It's looking for special, and that made, and I'm sure there's a bunch of those examples that hiring, an organizer, hiring someone like you as a transition specialist, your company, makes people back not just the money, would make a lot more money than they normally would, but also saves them so much time. I can't imagine liquidating a house like that. I mean, when I liquidated my own, when we sold our home and moved to Costa Rica, I knew we didn't have much in the way of high-end items, and the few things that I did, I put into storage. But we basically furnished out somebody's one-bedroom apartment for them who was coming out of a kind of a halfway house, a women's shelter, with a bunch of stuff in our house, and sold a bunch of stuff on Craigslist. But oh my goodness, the amount of time that it took. By the time we got to the end of it, there was so much we left behind in terms of donating or throwing out, that may have, brought us anywhere from another $500 to $1,000 if we had had the time to work with it. And
right.
I can't. I'm a little sad you're not franchising, to be honest.
Well, I'm never saying never. I'm just saying that the next 5-year plan does not have franchising in it.
Got it. Very good. Well, and I do love Ann Arbor. We have talked about that. So
I know. You need to come here.
I love Ann Arbor. It's such a great town. A great, great town. Okay. So Superstarters, to recap, lots and lots of great information on getting more organized, on how to really leverage your time and look at what you're good at, what you're not, how to make good business decisions, taking that long-term view and making the strategy and plan for 10 years out, 5 years out, rather than just having your blinders on so you can't see the forest for the trees. You can see the example here with the Betty Brigade from what Sharon's telling you. It really pays off on how you focus your business if you take that long-term view. Sharon, so our Superstarters can take some action steps this week. What are a couple of 2-3 action steps folks could take in the next week to help become more productive and more organized in their life or business?
Well, the first thing that you can do is just really prioritize your time. For example, I try, it doesn't always work out this way, but I try and only meet with clients on Thursdays and Fridays. And that's for a specific reason. So Thursdays and Fridays are the days that we do our managers meeting in the office, and we also do our staff meeting. So we start out the day nice and clean. And if you can imagine, organizing is kind of a dirty, not so glamorous job.
Yes.
And it's not how they make it on TV. And so if we plan on seeing our clients immediately after our staff meeting, then we're nice and clean and fresh and look good. And so we try and see them most often then. It doesn't mean that sometimes clients can only meet with us at the end of a long, dirty day. That's fine. But we're trying to say Thursdays and Fridays are our client meeting days so that we know that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are set aside for working with clients, and we're not going to be having additional meetings. We're not going to be having other client stuff in those days. And it actually kind of helps your head to know, oh, okay, I don't have extra stuff to do on this day.
That does. I mean, any day that you don't have to put on makeup for me is a good day. And then I can't even imagine working all day getting dirty and then having to try to meet with potential clients or new clients and switching gears like that. That's a great productivity tip right there. Now, and last question, Sharon, because I love talking with you, and you're just so much experience and knowledge, and for being a business that has come through everything that's happened with the Detroit area. That's something we didn't even talk about. Like, you started this business and grew this business inside of a city's, an area where the downturn was enormous during that time period. And that says a lot about tenacity, as far as I'm concerned, and you just being a pretty unreasonable person in the best sense of the word. So I appreciate that about you.
tenacity or stupidity, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Apparently, I just really like banging my head against a brick wall.
Well, I'm the same way, so I'm going to call it tenacity to save my own ego. But
Okay.
but finally, what's a legacy you'd like to leave in this world?
I've never thought about that. I really, honestly, I've never thought about that. That's the first time somebody's ever asked me that question. And I think it would probably be that I made people's lives simpler, that I really just made life easier for the people that we came into contact with.
And you're already well on your way to doing that for many, 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 many people and organizations. So thank you for the work that you do and for coming on the Backstage Pass today.
Well, thanks for having me. This was really fun.
It was great. Thank you, Sharon. And Superstarters, go out there this week, take action steps. You have your mission, you have your steps, and we'll see you next week on the Backstage Pass of the Start Something Show.